guys, welcome back to Notice That, an EMDR podcast. We are super excited to be here today with a special guest that we have for an interview. So I was on Facebook and I am a part of several different EMDR Facebook groups just because I can't seem to get enough of it. And had seen a post that I was intrigued by, and I got excited and I looked at who it was, and it was Jackie Flynn. And so I was like, hey, I like what she's saying on here. And I reached out through Facebook Messenger and was like, hey, any chance you would ever want to do an interview and talk a little bit more? And surprisingly enough, she was like, hey, I actually know who you are, what you're talking about. So she agreed, and we have Jackie here today. So Jackie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. When I just heard about your kind of areas of interest when Jen was first sharing about the potential for us to like have you on the podcast, I mean, EMDR, PVT, play therapy, all of that, attachment-based work, all of that is just so central to the way that we practice as well. So I was like, absolutely. Is she going to be on the show?
Oh, I'm excited. Yes, those are my jams. I even infuse it a little bit. I do integrate EMDR and couples therapy through the Gottman method a little bit.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yes, that's
Oh, man.
amazing.
That could be a whole nother episode.
Yeah. You got 2 hours or 3 hours, right? That'll be fine.
We could just do this all day.
Yeah.
So, Jackie, for our listeners, I want to share a little bit about like your the work that you do, and I'll just give a quick introduction and then let you elaborate in whatever areas feel necessary. So, Jackie is an Andrea-approved consultant as well as an advanced training provider, and she's got a few different trainings actually, and it sounds like another one coming out. She also does play therapy and is a registered play therapist, and I believe you said trainer for play therapy. Is that right?
Yes, a trainer for the Association for Play Therapy. One of my favorite things.
Amazing.
Oh, great.
So really a training level expert in both EMDR and play therapy. One of the things that got us super excited is seeing one of her trainings on practical applications of polyvagal theory. And that's the one that's coming out soon, or the one that's already
I
out?
just taught it last Thursday for the second time, and I'll be speaking at the Mid-Atlantic Play Therapy Conference on it. So I just love it. I'm also a podcaster as well, so I have an episode in the hopper waiting.
Oh, great.
Nice.
That's
Very
awesome.
cool. And then you have a refresher course in EMDR. It looks like you kind of put a highlight on attachment work, neuroscience, all of that with EMDR in the refresher course as well.
Yes, today was day one of the 2 days, like at the time of this recording. So once you learn about the polyvagal theory, you can't not have it be part of
Everywhere. Everything. Yeah.
incredible. So of course it comes out in all 8 of the phases, the AIP network, the how we show up in our just therapy role, in our other, I just took an ego state training, which was amazing.
Yeah.
In every role that we feel in our lives, that polyvagal theory can really kind of play at least give us some explanation of like how the safety and connection apply.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Absolutely.
And then the other training I saw was 8 phases of EMDR with children and adolescents integrating play therapy techniques.
Yeah, that's my
That is
baby.
awesome. Oh, and that is a 5-day experiential training. Is that right?
Yes, girl, we go through all 8 phases. It's so fun.
All 8 phases. That's amazing.
All 8 phases with play therapy. So we look at how to gather our potential targets and the resources in phase 1 through play, and then the preparation through play, assessment, all those procedural steps. How do you do that, like in the sand tray and through expressive arts, through child-centered play therapy, all the way through, the desensitization
very
critical
cool.
ways for BLS.
Wow.
Yes, that is amazing. And I loved seeing on your website you have a whole list of free worksheets related to, that's just wonderful to get those resources out there to people. So that's really neat to see that you're doing that also.
Oh yeah. And I think that's one thing, a beautiful thing I see in our EMDR community. There's a lot of generous people out there,
Yeah.
yourself included. Like your podcast, I don't even know if you have an awareness of how much people love you guys. But in our local EMDR no fee study group, it's like we even like the one on the triune brain. That was the focus of our meeting at one time. We were
Oh,
like, be sure you listen to that before we have the group.
Before we have the meeting, yeah, that's so
And
cool.
then in my consultation groups, I'm like, be sure that you guys listen to the Melissa episode with the Fraser's table. And then
Yeah.
to kind of explore, the options of that. So your gifts to our EMDR community are well valued.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's always fun to hear that people are listening.
Yes, and appreciating and making meaning of it and taking it into their practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very interesting.
Well, I'm going to hand it to you to dig into the specifics of some of your questions with PBT.
Okay. For me, one of the questions I had just with anything polyvagal theory, especially if you've been practicing for any amount of time, there was a time where you practiced before you had the awareness of PBT.
Yes.
And so to me, I'm so curious about what that was like for you and what the transition to PBT was like why all of that.
It's like you don't know what you don't know. I thought I was pretty jamming before. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm doing pretty well. When you learn about the polyvagal theory, you look at it through different eyes. And Dr. Stephen Porges has given us such a gift through this, right?
Yeah.
But that helped me, and I'm an SSP provider now too, which I kind of use as an adjunct to the MDR sessions. But Deb Dana's work has really been instrumental and influential. So, for example, when I am gathering potential targets in phase 1 history taking, I'm not just looking at the event, the car crash, the abuse, I felt third grade. I'm looking at the autonomic nervous system's response to that event. How did your life change, and the before and after that goes with that?
Yeah.
Or, for example, instead of just looking at potential resources, I love this about Deb Dana. I literally thought I was going to be able to meet her at the psychotherapy networker, and then COVID happened. I didn't get to.
Oh no.
But she came up with a glimmers concept.
Yeah.
I love it. That has resources written all over it. Hey, before we
Absolutely.
get started today, let's think of a glimmer. Let's just roll back the past 7 days. What are 2 or 3 glimmers that's happened?
Yeah.
Ooh, talk about building up. You want one of my trainers from my basic training, Linda Ruff, she's a brilliant lady. She's like, you want way more good stuff than tough stuff. So at the beginning of each session, I really look at the glimmers. We do the breath work, which is another part of polyvagal theory, being able to kind of change the state of the autonomic nervous system. Phase 2, they know their states. They don't shame their states. They don't think, gosh, I was in dorsal vagal and I really sucked this week. There's that shifts. It's more of like, I was in dorsal vagal. What did my autonomic nervous system need? And how can I shift that into sympathetic? And then ultimately, whatever my nervous system needs at that time, and not seeing one state as good or bad or right or wrong. This is just where we are in our nervous system, is like adapting to what's happening to us.
Yeah.
Just a few things has changed.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of just excitement that I feel myself wanting to just like run into talking about the specifics of each kind of component of PBT within the 8 phases. But I do, if you're comfortable sharing, I want to hear a little bit about like what was your practice like before PBT, and how did that then kind of show up in all of what the trainings you're offering now, like play therapy and PBT and EMDR? Like, why all of those together? What was your kind of lead up to that?
So I actually see it in like my videos and stuff, my training videos. I see the difference, almost like if it was like a reality.
Like a time lapse. Yeah, yeah.
It's like, this is the before and this is the after. So before one big thing I think I have always held is fidelity. EMDRIA has just given us such a beautiful gift with the EMDRIA definition. But when I first started out working with children, I wasn't sure that I was doing it with fidelity. I was like, man, this person's only 4 years old and I feel like I'm chasing them around. They don't even want to touch the buzzers.
Yeah.
So it can get complicated with kids. So I made it my mission to every day I read the imagery of definition, and I would look at it when I did my documentation after the sessions. And I was like, this is kind of dense. So I need to put it into goals. So beforehand, I was making sure I was meeting the goals and I was really hitting the fidelity. But I was very I was rigid as a play therapist can be, with rigidity, like, okay, this says I need to do this and I need to do that. Well, if the target is that accident, we're going to bring up the target. I'm going to have the toys and have, maybe more adult clients than kid clients, but we're going to specifically talk about the event. Now my shift is we're going to talk, okay, so that happened. Let's talk about how's that setting in your nervous system. Let's look at one thing that Deb Dana brings to us so beautifully is mapping the nervous system out, looking at, okay, dorsal, sympathetic, and ventral. Let's think about like that and how your nervous system is responding, and making the somatic pieces and the experiential piece of your nervous system more of the focus rather than the actual event. That's just one of the many ways, I think.
Yeah.
As you're talking about this, I think I relate a lot to that, and seeing my nature to lean towards the fidelity and the protocol and the scripts, and then finding, oh my gosh, how much that can be enhanced when we add new lenses in which we look at it. So we can still be, really staying true to understanding the foundations of EMDR and what it's doing. But when we can add, we don't just have to be distracted in what was the event of the trauma, but how did your system then respond to that is actually where the information lies, the most significant information lies.
That's what matters. It doesn't, well, it does matter that it happened, but we're sitting there with the client and they're having this experience in their organism. That's what we're changing. So another big thing, and this kind of unconventional, but when you meet a play therapist, you see like some strange things. We all had a conference, and it's like you see like some people that might be categorized as kind of a little bit weird, but we embrace it. But one thing that changed after the polyvagal theory for me was integrating nature. Nature is a big regulator. Nature is a big part of kind of that connectivity, that safety. So now I offer these intensives. I live by the beach. So people come, not like a ton of people. I'm hoping to grow that part of my practice, but I've done several over time where we will do an intensive 2 or 3 hour session. I guess that would be like an extended session on the beach. And and I have a recording of it that I show my training. Some people are like, what am I looking at? So we set up the procedural steps, like it's suppose we're doing phase 3 assessment through phase 7 closure. All of the procedural steps. What's the worst part? And that usually is us standing on the beach right before sunrise. What is the worst part? What's an image that represents that? The person draws it in the sand. Okay, so let's tease out some emotions. We bring out the emotion words. We find where they're located in the body. Where's that physical location? And then we, of course, tease out the negative cognition and the positive cognition. And then I'll have to measure the SUD just like kinesthetically through movement, because that's a big part of the polyvagal theory, digging in the sand.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And then this is where the good stuff happens. I have them hold the target and the negative cognition, and let's walk that through. A huge part of polyvagal theory is co-regulation, being with the client. We are barefoot walking through the shore, and that's the bilateral stimulation. And I say when I say pause, we just stop, look out into the water for the dual awareness, that integration of nature. Just tell me the little headline and what's coming up. Okay, let's walk that through. And then we continue, and then I check the SUD, as we do through phases, phase 4 especially, till that SUD is down to 0 or ecologically valid. And then when we finally get to the positive cognition, whatever it may be, and the SUD's lower and we're installing it and we're walking slow, and they write their positive cognition and they update the image. So for that
Wow.
adaptive shift, I don't know if I'm allowed to say a curse word on here, but they write
Sure.
what. So like they may like put like an updated image and be like, I am a badass.
Yeah, there you go.
So notice on 1 to 7, how true is I'm a badass? All right, whew. All right, let's tap that in. And then we
Yeah.
go together. And I got this from a video I seen at the beginning of COVID from Roy Kiesling. All these people are like so brilliant with their ideas. And if you piece them all together, you get something
Yeah.
amazing. Together, we tap it through that co-regulation. Let's just tap that in. I am a badass. And then the phase 7 is incredible. We like build a sandcastle or something. We breathe. And I don't like using big globalization where it's like never or always, but I have literally never seen that SUD not drop to a 0 on some big targets. So the integration of nature is probably my most exciting one. Now, you do need to take some extra precautions, like as far as confidentiality. There's a nature-based, I call it nature-based play therapy consent form. But with the adults mainly is what, I just kind of use the same wording. And then we just kind of, you may see other people out and about, and that's one of the potentials with this, and they're aware. And another piece of the polyvagal theory is cues of safety and cues of danger. So if that's a cue of danger, like I had a teenager one time, we went to the park and she's like, I can't, what if my friends see me? That was a cue of danger for her. That told me that this isn't the right approach for her. That felt so activating for her that we didn't need to go out in nature because the benefits of that were way less. She wouldn't have been able to lean in with the vulnerability that it takes to really get the good reprocessing done. So that's my nature-based integration piece that I love. I literally could see my face getting red talking about it.
Yeah, no,
your
it's
energy about it
amazing,
is very contagious and just it feels so exciting. And I think the piece I love the most in this is we oftentimes think standard protocol of EMDR has to look like sitting in an office, sitting in a chair with a device of some sort, or hand movements, whatever that is, and is following a script and is going back and forth. And to be able to say it can be done to fidelity and it can be done authentic and true to the system and really be able to reconsolidate memories. But we could be on a beach, digging in sand, building sand castles, walking. Like no one would even guess that's what that is. And it's so beautiful to take the depth of your understanding of what does it really mean to reprocess or install resourcing and say, I can take those same concepts, but it doesn't have to look the exact way that maybe we saw in training videos in our basic training.
Yes. Yeah. And what's really cool too is that when people hear this, they have their own life going on. They're probably thinking of a gazillion things that we couldn't even think of. Their creativity starts sparking. It's like, wow, I could do that and I could do this and that. I think this is my thoughts. If it meets the goals of the EMDRIA definition, if phase 1 says, hey, we need to assess to see if this is good timing for therapy. We need to look for secondary gain. We need to get out potential targets, potential resources. We need to look at the client's capacity to manage affect. If we can meet all those and we're doing that, whatever way it looks like, then the symptoms reduce. Then we're doing EMDR, gosh, I've done EMDR underneath it. I've done EMDR on the back of a minivan with a kid that didn't want to get out of the car.
Yeah. That is beautiful.
Yes,
and I love making that connection of if we're meeting the goals, it doesn't actually matter how we're doing it. It is EMDR, and we can get as creative and free with that because humans are not standardized. And so a standardized approach just isn't going to fit everybody, but we can change it. That's beautiful. And I imagine that comes in so handy with kids because having worked with kids a lot myself, it's like, there's no way I'm going to get them to sit down and walk through some of these scripts that we've got.
So I talked to one of my clients' moms, and I have the permission to share with you about a case.
Oh, great.
about how the polyvagal, definitely with children, but across the board. But another piece, polyvagal does present in the beginning as complex, but I'm here to say that it is digestible, it is actionable, and just kind of listen to the books. You got to just be hungry for the information and
Yeah.
piece it in. This little boy had heart surgery at a very young age. And just today, the kid that I seen during the break of my training is going back for another doctor's visit, and he gets so activated that the what polyvagal theory tells us is why we get a dry mouth when we start and get in that sympathetic state, or why we may vomit, is our body's trying to conserve our metabolic energy. And so it's just trying to expel whatever it has. Even in dorsal vagal, we may urinate, we may defecate.
Yeah.
So we can use some of these things, these techniques like the lemon wedge visualization to kind of moisten up the mouth with saliva, and be able to kind of pull that digestive system back online. Well, anyway, with this little boy, familiarity and predictability, big piece, big, almost like pillars of the polyvagal theory.
Yeah.
And safety and connection. So number one, first session with this little guy, mom comes in. Now, before the polyvagal theory was, I was like, because I was a teacher, and I have prior in my adaptive information, parent being there makes kid not as vulnerable. There sometimes it's like a learned helplessness. In the therapy space, that limits us. So mom came in, and they had this connection. They both had on Luigi hats.
Oh.
It was beautiful. And the kid took off the Luigi hat when he felt safe. So now how mom, and this is the polyvagal theory kind of infused in his therapy, mom is there. She's a sense of safety and connection. Mom has the mask. For the predictability, she has the mask from the doctor. She got one from the hospital that we use as the target. It's like instead of an image, we have the actual mask. She holds the mask up and drops a piece of candy. So this kid is so familiar with the mask. He's played with it. He's pretended. Today she brought in pictures. I had her kind of Google what the room would look like and everything.
Yeah.
That's how we set up the target. Mom's there.
Wow.
Another use of the polyvagal theory in this kid's session, and he calls me the place to go. Or Miss Jackie, I go to Miss Jackie because she's a place to go where I don't get nervous about going to the hospital anymore.
Oh, that's so lovely. Yeah, let's have that.
But she does the BLS. So I noticed a lot of times with medical trauma, people, our nervous systems don't feel safe. Like don't feel safe in our human, just our felt sense. But he does with mom. So mom like follows him around the playroom, and we incorporated brother in there because brother is a resource. Brother is a glimmer. Brother is amazing. All of them are amazing. And then I do this like with mom when it's time for the BLS. I'll go like that, and then mom just taps in, and I'm like, and then she stops. So he feels safe. Before the polyvagal theory knowledge, I probably wouldn't have had mom in there. I probably would have either skipped on the BLS if he couldn't tolerate any of the creative means, or I probably would have had a dual awareness speaker system where I wasn't able to go fast and go slow and pause and everything and like a last ditch effort. But instead I had the loving hands of his beautiful mother doing the bilateral, that co-regulation. Another big piece of polyvagal theory is the neuroception, feeling safe. He has mom in there. He has brother in there. Today on the way to the hospital, he had dog in the car, and then he's introducing me to the dog. And then there's that relationship piece, like daddy has met Jackie, the dog's met Jackie, my family, so he feels that neuroception of safe.
Beautiful.
That's beautiful. Yeah. The level of kind of awareness and how you're able to articulate that, I think, is so telling of some of the benefits of PBT. Even in an already robust protocol like EMDR, we can add even more kind of understanding, insight, awareness, context to really what we're looking at with somebody healing from something that is very overwhelming and can affect a person in a very, very specific way. So I love just hearing some of the specificity that you're able to use.
Yeah, we say a training that we do that it incorporates polyvagal theory, attachment, and AIP all together, of just when we're able to look at a case with these lenses, we can do EMDR with such greater purpose and intention and awareness of what we're doing and why we're doing it. You can just understand it so much more clearly, where it's not like we're just trusting it, hopefully something will magically work. We can do it with so much greater intention.
Yeah. Yeah, you can actually kind of work on the areas that need to be worked on.
Yeah.
Think about being with that to me, we have the co-regulation, the neuroception, and then the hierarchy of the different states. If I were to really truly just have to narrow it down to one word, it would be with.
Yeah.
And I read Dr. Siegel's Mindful Therapist book, which I had to get consultation because Bill Brislin is like an amazing consultant. He was this is my certification process. And I was working with a client at that time that had like a car accident, and he had like in the processing, I could taste the fuel in my mouth. I was like, Bill, what do I do? This is so, I'm using these techniques from this book, but this is a little too much. And he's like, okay, Jackie, you're like that on Star Trek, the empath that's just shut down.
Yeah.
But if you pull back, you can actually be with the client so much to where you don't get shut down. But sometimes that may mean that you have like a tear in your eye. That may mean that as they're talking, and one of my big, just influenced by Lisa Dion, the creator of synergetic play therapy. She has like this way of doing play therapy that is so interconnected. So it's like as they're building up the blocks, it's like, oh, it's getting taller, it's gonna fall. So I kind of integrate that into the part of the polyvagal, like, oh, as you were telling me that, I like literally felt in my heart, a heaviness, and I could hear my voice starts to change because intonation of voice is a big part of polyvagal theory. I could feel a little bit of like tears kind of welling up behind my eyes. I'm wondering what you're noticing in your body, or even just saying it like that. Is that with that co-regulation? I am with you. Safety and connected.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it also just to me has so much context to give to where the client can actually start to not just become aware of their own body, but through that neuroceptive process and mentalizing, be able to become aware of what is happening in you. And that makes that invitation into co-regulation so much more just intentional, rather than here's what I'm feeling in my body, what are you feeling in yours? It's very connected all the way through, even in some of the language and some of the tone of voice you're using. Like you were kind of adding a lot of that specificity. All of those neuroceptive cues of safety. Beautiful.
Yes. I even hear it in y'all's podcast. Like I told you before we started recording that I don't know if fangirl would be the right word, but you're very influential in our EMDR community here in the local area. And we feel like we know you. So we call you guys by first name. It's like, hey, did you listen to Melissa's episode? You need to listen to that one with Melissa. Hey, did you listen to that one where Bridget was talking about the polyvagal? Okay. Did you know Jen is going for like she's going for like the somatic psychology degree somewhere on the West Coast? It's like you have like this feeling of connection, which I mean, as in therapy, we have this intimate, like we're together, but it can even happen on like us recording these guided imageries for our clients. It could happen on, okay, I'm going to give you this book to take home, or I'm going to give you these notes that I took, take this home. We can be with our clients even when we're not with them. We could be with them years after that our therapy has ended. That's the power of just a really strong relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that PVT did for me that I so just admire, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bonnie Badenoch.
Yes,
Do you know that name? Okay, yes, absolutely. So she has spoken many different places at this point, but about the power of internalization of co-regulation. And I think that is just so powerful when we actually start talking about resourcing and what actually, when you talk about being with, what we really mean by that, not just now, but in perpetuity. Once you've met me and we've had the experience of seeing and encountering one another, you take me with you wherever you go, just as I take you with me wherever I go.
Oh, that's so good. God, I am experiencing that. Just even thinking about like what that would feel like as somebody that hasn't had the width experience. Maybe in the early years of life, they experienced neglect or something.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love literally, I have said literally like 50 times today. That's my favorite word. Marshall Lyles, he's an injury-proof consultant in Austin, Texas. This man is incredible. He's also a sand trade therapist. He's actually Bonnie's friend. He was talking about her 2 days ago. So when we do courses, we talk to each other and get ideas from each
That's
other.
so cool.
Yeah, I was trying to like the body scan, for example. I was like, Marshall, I had this idea of, I really want to have the body scan be polyvagal theory style, kind of Gingham style, but polyvagal style, like I want it to be like authentic. And one of my consultees like, Jackie, you have the sympathetic state right there. Deb McManus, she's brilliant. She's an animal assisted play therapist. She's like, you have the sympathetic state all day long right there in this body scan. But what about the dorsal state? What about the disconnected, that shut down, that numb state? And I was like, Dad, that's right. I don't have that. You know what I don't have? I don't have ventral. I only have like when people are activated. So that's in part of my course is where the body scan, another kind of practical polyvagal theory application in the EMDR is having the body scan, not just kind of say, you're activated or that. So we have this bidirectional, we have a nervous system. We don't have just a brain and a body. We have this whole nervous system where there's this communication happening so fast. And it just, the web of connections that wrap around our internal organs. So Marshall was, I was telling Marshall, and he brought up Bonnie's name. I'm like going a really long way around this story, but he brought up Bonnie's name, talking about like, I was like, Marshall, I want to do what you do. You're not just a teacher. When you teach, I felt when you tell a story, I think of that story like a month later, it is in me. And he's like, I learned that partially from Bonnie. She has kind of rocking, I think bilateral left hemisphere is the information. Then you slide into the experience, that connectivity with the right hemisphere.
Yeah.
What does that look like? That kind of looks like BLS, right? Right there. Some brilliant people in this EMDR community, I tell you.
Yeah, and just in psychotherapy as a whole, I think that's one of my favorite parts about practicing in this way, where we're not just focused on this kind of tribalistic, this is what type of therapist I am and I'm only doing this, but we're creating a posture of humility across these various disciplines that have been, writing and practicing for so long, that we can then, as Jen said earlier, put these lenses on over top each other as if, kind of layers of transparency, by which then we can see so much more than we ever could with one lens, even if we committed all of our therapy to that one lens. There's just no way that we could see what we could with all the others stacked on top of each other.
Oh, that's so true. That's why I think it's important to kind of go out of our comfort zone. Like I have to say, becoming a EMDR-proof consultant I think I'm getting more from my consultees than they're getting from me. These people are like IFS trained, or they're DBT trained, or they may be like a sex therapist, and all of these areas. I'm like, whoa, that's an interesting perspective. And once you hear that, you can't unhear it.
Yes.
And it's amazing. It's all those different layers. It makes you a better consultant, better therapist, better.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, just after hearing some of the experiential work that you're doing, and with the consultation work that I do, this is a question that I field a lot, and so I'd be very excited to hear what you'd have to say. But with this spontaneity in the therapy room or in the environment that you're doing that type of work, what has been your kind of experience of learning to just trust your intuition and your spontaneity?
Okay, so some of the best learning experiences comes through struggle, right? So I've made a lot of mistakes. And with my trainees, like I showed them the videos where I'm like, you see right there, I'm a cognitive interweave. That slowed the client down. I needed to not say that right then. Or like the spontaneity of being with a 3-year-old. You can be kind of as rigid as you want, and that 3-year-old isn't gonna.
Yeah.
So having that, being a play therapist has helped me grow far beyond what I even thought I could be. Having a child in the playroom that I remember coming back after my training and thinking, okay, I got my manual, I got my buzzers, and the 5-year-old sitting there and they're off. They're not even on the couch anymore. So it's caused me to like kind of go back to that EMDR definition and the goals checklist. Like, how can I plug in my knowledge? So that may be like the person's at the sand tray and the image is the sand tray, and right there I need to pounce on it, and I need to say that's the target. What's the worst part with the little ones? And I had the intro training with synergetic play therapy, help with the spontaneity really, really well. Sometimes you have to tease out the procedural steps yourself. So
Yeah.
like, with the little guy right here, I'm not going to be able to say, hey, what's the worst part of the thought of the dog? Every time I ask a question, it's going to pull him up into his left hemisphere, and their brains aren't even fully developed, right? So I said, oh, I'm so connected, right? So even like as they move, I'll match my body movements to them. I love aerial sports and Barb Melberger's book, The Somatic Psychology, is so good because they give you permission to have that movement in there, which is a big part of polyvagal theory, the movement. But you may need to, like, as a therapist, you may need to identify the procedural parts yourself. Like, they may be at the little kitchen set screaming at the stuffed animals to eat their meals. Like, the worst part is they're not doing what you need them to do. Oh, it seems like I'm not in control. Fits that. I'm feeling angry. I got to feel that in my face, and I feel my chest. And then I do the whisper technique. Is it all right if I tap?
I love that.
Establish. So you need the safety, that permission. And then we'll go all the way through phase 4, which can happen super quick with kids.
Yeah. Speaking of you talked about just the auditory kind of importance of paying attention through a polyvagal lens, and you're stimulating, you're matching that resonance in them energetically, and then mismatching it with that whisper of the, is it okay if I tap? Or one of the things that I'll do is I'll just say, can I ask you a question? Or can I, can I share something with you? And I'll whisper that after matching their intensity there, and it brings their focus in, even of some of the most dysregulated or easily dysregulated clients, as just these little nervous systems that are just filled with so much energy. When we can match it and then come in with that mismatched whisper that's so warmly intended through the relationship that we have with them. I just think that's so beautiful. I love that.
And the way you describe how connected you are in that, where you in your own system are like upregulating with them, like you're joining them in that big, and then come back in, and now we have the bilateral, and we can co-experience kind of the coming down in this connected way, and that co-regulation is absolutely incredible.
It wasn't always there. So that's before and after. You know when that started? With Lisa Dion's Aggression and Play Therapy book. Okay, so these kids have, they've experienced trauma. So in the session, I'm at the sand tray and a handful of sand gets thrown in. And then here I am, I'm super dysregulated. In my mind, I mean, the human experience, I'm like, I'm going to call mommy. I had it all. And then I thought, okay, I need to pull it back together. I'm dysregulated. I said, oh, I got sand in my eye. And then I tried to wipe it off, and I was like really just trying to kind of be with it. So I talked to Lisa, and I had read the book, but I didn't quite put it in the application. That could have been a target right there. That could have been like, oh, I got sand in my eye. The worst part is I feel like I can't trust. We were playing together one moment, and next thing you know, I'm like hurting. I'm feeling confused. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling disconnected. I feel like crying, and I can hear a difference in my voice. It's feeling really big. It's feeling really big. I want to think I can trust, but it doesn't feel really true right now. I slid right through all those steps. So interestingly enough, I talked to Mom afterwards, and I was like, she's like, I'm glad you could get in and get a session with them. I was like, yeah, me too. I'm still have the dysregulation going on. She's like, do you know somebody threw sand in his face at preschool? I was like,
oh
wow.
I know.
Yeah.
He told me with this play.
Yeah.
That's
He
the
showed me.
beauty.
Yeah.
That's such a big honor. Like we are in this space. An adult may say in their narrative through their left hemisphere, their language, the
Yeah.
kid says through their play. When it's all activated like that, then, and I'm connected, we can really get that sud down. It is like
Yeah.
so powerful. So I
Mhm.
Yeah.
wasn't always that connected, but that's when you can really get some good work done. But I do have to say, after those sessions, like I went through 3 adult sessions with paint on my face. I didn't even realize. That's like, why didn't somebody tell me how like
Yeah.
paint, my hair is like all over the place?
Uh-huh. Yes. Yes. I'm feeling very, very connected right now. Yeah. There's so many moments where I have my hair in a bun usually when I'm working, and I have some kids that just want to crawl all over me. And by the end of it, it's like hanging down here, and I'm trying to talk to the parents, like, yeah, so we'll see each other next week. And then I've got like, like marks on me from them, and yeah, it's a lot. So
That's being with. I mean,
that's
I
right.
can't think of if I were to picture you being with your client, that crawling on you and your hair all
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
That's with that's a dedicated therapist there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's so, I mean, to me, one of the things that PVT really helped me see is it just brought a lot of language to what I've just felt my whole life in so many ways, of just this energy that we clearly connect with without even having words between each other. And for me, working with kids, it's so palpable.
Yeah.
And that when we can bring a language to it, the looks you'll get from kids when you put a word, or you start to show them how to connect those words to the feelings that they're having. I mean, it's almost like that incredulous, like, what are you doing? Like, how are you talking this way? I have one little girl that will, like, when I say something back to her that matches that, she'll like grab her mom's hand and be like, he, what? Yeah, and it's just like so amazing to get to that place just through reflecting what I'm feeling in me
Yes.
and sharing that in the space, and having them then feel so invited, because we're whispering, we're down at the table and we're just connected. It's like it's its own universe.
Yeah.
That's what Dr. Siegel, I think, if I were to kind of guess, what he means by feel and felt.
Yes, that's right.
You know when you feel felt by somebody, and you know when
Yeah.
somebody's just kind of BS, and you're like, I understand.
Yeah.
And then you know when somebody's like,
Yeah.
whoa, oh gosh.
Yeah.
And just Deb Dana calls it vocal burst.
Yeah.
Just the movement, the gestures, all of that. Like
Yeah.
even as you're saying, getting down and changing your voice, like
Oh, yeah.
level of communication is so good.
Yeah, well, and you're making me spin up a little bit here, but like the feeling felt. That's where we connect with Siegel's term of the moi.
Oh yes.
Like when we feel felt with each other, we transcend the I and you, and we're now in a new third, in the we, in the moi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's leaving me speechless, because I haven't heard that in a while. I've definitely, before my polyvagal theory knowledge, I got to see him in Tampa, Florida, and he did his yes activity that
Oh wow.
literally left me in tears, which I've done in school presentations now with parents and stuff.
Yeah.
But I hadn't thought about that through the polyvagal kind of terminology. That's it.
Yeah.
That's that interconnected. We have
Yeah.
the me, and the we
Yeah.
together, and it's just that interconnectivity in this.
That's co-regulation right there. Yeah, context, choice, connection. You're in that space of being able to actually feel felt with,
Yeah.
and that's beautiful.
My brain is still sticking on, Bridger, what you were asking before, that intuition and how to really lean into that. And I think polyvagal theory, in the way in which you're talking, Jackie, is about acknowledging we are a human nervous system in the room as well.
As
and a lot of
therapists,
times, yes, through our training of becoming therapists, I feel like we accidentally learn how to leave ourselves out of the room and show up more as just therapist, not full human therapist. And so in this, knowing when we have intuition or instinct on something, it's our bodies telling us something about what's happening in the room, what's happening for them. It's communicating to us. And so when we enter into, an extensive training process like EMDR, I see so many new therapists try to, the script and the protocol becomes their intuition, and they leave intuition and instinct aside, and it's part of the learning process. And I just did a group today where I said, as you're learning now, you're going to lean on the script, but our goal is that you learn it and you get familiar enough and you know it well enough that you come back into letting your intuition lead the session.
Yeah.
Because your body is going to know, and it's going to communicate, and it's going to have such an influence, where then we can lean back in on that of connecting with our clients from that place of instinct, not just from our cognitive knowledge of a process.
Oh, that's so good. It makes me think about sometimes the people in the trainings, like, you didn't do 45 or 35 passes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Talk about a cue of danger. Like when you start responding to me with "you didn't," like it's just like, oh yeah, curiosity, creativity shut down. Yeah.
Yeah, especially as a trainer, because it feels so
Yeah.
vulnerable showing your mistakes.
Yeah.
I think of it though, like that intuition is so important. I like to use metaphors to kind of write it home, but the intuition is something that comes with experience and practice and being attuned. I think though, even like that BLS piece, like I didn't always know when to stop. But really being attuned to your clients, noticing I had some brain spotting training too that gave me a little heightened awareness of little the shifts and stuff. But think of like if you make brownies, it says stir it for 2 minutes. I don't stir it for 2 minutes. Sometimes I stir it for 1 minute. I look to see if there's any big lumps, and I may taste of it, be like, it's got the egg in there. Who cares? But you just kind of do it until you know you're ready. That's kind of like how this is. Like, hey, there's the target. It's right there. They're right at the point. Little adaptive shift. I'm a consultant for Dr. Andrew Dobo's basic training. I get to work with some of his consultees, and he teaches us to really be mindful of when that adaptive shift occurs. It may be like they open their eyes. They may be like, or like or something like that. And then he does the somatic bridge, which is super cool. All of that.
We talk about those as just autonomic shifts. When you can pay attention to that shift just a moment, you can really start to then cue into and attune to that and help the client integrate from a whole brain kind of perspective.
Which is polyvagal all day long.
Yeah, that's right.
We have all of these connections in our face.
That's right.
Just a little, I remember one teenager, she's like, what's that look for? I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
What just happened? And if I had it on video, I would be able to see it. But we're tuned to them. A lot of times they're tuned to us. They're looking for cues of danger. Like, I've just shared something very vulnerable with this therapist. Are they going to judge me? Are they going to shame me?
Yeah. And we use a just concept of strategy, talking about symptoms is not so much what we focus on. We talk a lot about strategy. So behavioral strategies that, even in the telling of a experience in therapy, there's strategy being employed to get that message across, but to also garner enough safety to still feel like I'm exposed, but I'm also safe enough that if they judge me, I can just close the wall back up and I can just go back into my place. But with PVT, to me, you just get so much just microscopic insight about what really makes a invitation feel safe to the person to really share it and to really kind of just connect their somatic experience of that trauma, whatever it was. So it's not just this left brain articulation or this, here's the story of it that I'm completely disconnected from the affect of. Yeah. But here's actually how I felt and what it was actually like.
Yeah. And I think even, to describe kind of what I'm experiencing from you, even as you're speaking, I'm noticing you're leaning in, and I'm having like this temptation to lean in. Communication, almost like this is something really important. That's the stuff our clients pick up on.
Yeah, absolutely. When we were talking about the spontaneity and the intuition, there was a spiritual director that I followed for a few years ago that had this concept of transcend and include, which I really love that idea, from this rigidity that we need when we're learning we need to know the right way. The goal is not to then live in the rigidity, but it's to transcend and include what was learned. Yeah, I love that. That just kept coming to mind as you were talking.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to wrap my mind around that. I think about, gosh, I float back to my days in the basic training. It felt like I was trying to take a sip of water, like a drink from a fire hose.
Yeah.
I didn't even have the rigidity. I was like, man, I forgot about negative cognitions for like the first month. EMDR is so forgiving, but that rigidity kind of is necessary, but you give yourself permission to transcend
and then include that. What you left.
So good. That's why connecting with the community, like having these EMDR no fee study groups, why listening to these podcasts, why getting together, maybe getting your own EMDR therapy, it can be so powerful to help with that transcendence and inclusion.
Yeah, absolutely.
This has been so great. You are so dynamic, and it's like truly felt fun. Like this feels like playing, just getting to sit here and connect and ask you questions. We would love to have you anytime that you want to join us and maybe talk about couples. And we can.
Yeah, I do want to, because you brought up couples just there, I do want to just, I know it's a bit of a shift from talking about kids and play therapy in a way. I think they're humans just as they were also once young people. So when we're talking about how to work with kids, the therapists that I work with that have such a hard, visceral reaction to oh no, I don't work with kids because whatever they might say or whatever. I'm just like, are you kidding me? You were a kid.
And you work with kids. What does Caleb say? Children with adult masks?
Yeah, exactly. So, adults are just, what he says, adults are just children with adult masks on. So, it doesn't really make the difference. There's a different way of connecting. But when you're in the room with a couple, what are some of the things that you find yourself thinking about kind of pre and post PVT, and how you see all those kind of things coming into play?
Two main things, and this is what came out in Marshall and I's conversation, Marshall Lyles, safety and connection. Dr. Porges has this phrase, we all want to feel safe in the arms of others. Just to normalize it. Relationships are hard. Child-parent relationships can be hard. Intimate relationships can be hard. Peer relationships, work relationships. When somebody finally makes it to couples therapy, a lot of times they have one foot out the door. Not always. Sometimes they have one foot in the door, and then it's maybe you need to step back on this premium. But the polyvagal theory, I think about safety and connection, and Gottman method is what I'm trained in. And it's very much of an inclusive. There's the left hemisphere, and then we also can trace things. I think it's the couples counseling version of the float back. Let's think of this trigger and float back in time to, they don't actually say float back, but it's tons of little interventions. You do a really good assessment, tells you what areas to focus on. Another time in your life outside of this relationship that you've experienced the same kind of thing. And I'm like, wow, that's like a target. So how do I do, safety and connection is PVT, but I do the EMDR not with every couple. Yet the big piece is assess for safety and connection. If it's not safe in that relationship, some people come to me with such bad pain, like failed adoptions. They may have a child that completed suicide. Just really painful stuff that they need EMDR. They may not go to anybody else. I love GTEP. That group traumatic event protocol. If you can have safety and connection, it can be such a beautiful healing thing. But I do have to say, one thing that I feel like has to be in place for the safety and connection is that it's not rushed. They can feel that. So I don't like the 2 hours afterwards, because I feel my autonomic nervous system gets strained, because a lot of times it brings up real big emotions, especially on these big targets. We'll do the GTEP, and I will carve out like the next 2 hours just to kind of chill and give them like some direction. Like after the session, I think it'd be helpful to go walk around in the park or maybe go walk on the beach. Something which polyvagal, that integration with nature. Let's do the closure version, even though GTEP isn't the 8 phases. Let's kind of pull our autonomic nervous system back online through nature, connection, and safety. And what we talked about today here, let's kind of just sleep on it. And then tomorrow, after you've had a chance to rest, then maybe discuss some of the things that you reprocess so that it could have this kind of point of kind of completion. That's how I used it. And it's been fascinating to see the healing in the couples.
Yes.
Can't do with every couple,
Yeah.
especially I tried it a little bit with infidelity. That's like a landmine waiting to happen. But with these shared experiences
Yeah.
that are painful, that's where it really shines.
Yeah, for me, when I'm working with couples, I love framing it from what our definition of kind of successful trauma treatment really is, which is that to get to the place where my mind and body both agree that I'm safe in connection. And my
Yes.
mind and body both agree that I'm safe in connection. And when we can have that as our focus, yeah, we just bring that sense of invitation, if it feels safe enough, to actually become human with each other in the space, not just the projected kind of ghosts of the past that we're all just haunted by in those places. So I love the language you're using when you're talking about working
That's
with couples.
beautiful what you just described. The way that you described that, like just come together, like on humanity, we are
Yeah.
in this space together. I think about in COVID, here we are, all these cues of dangers at the beginning, and we're meeting with these people online. And this one lady, I had this like for a while, it was my jam to do after bedtime sessions with the parents. I thought that
Oh, there you go.
it was for a little bit. But I met with these parents, and specifically, I would incorporate, like I did the mom with the little kid. I would incorporate the spouse. I did it with two, actually only two, where the spouse would do the bilateral stimulation, and then when I would say pause, I'd say pause like that. It was all I would use this minimal amount of words. I learned that from Claire Maurer in Orlando. That the less we can talk, the better. It doesn't pull them into their thinking part of the brain. But I would cue the husband to stop. And then when he would stop, he would take his hands and then put like this on her solar plexus.
Oh,
We were no longer stuck. We
Yeah.
met the treatment goals very shortly after that. That's
Wow.
another way that you can work with couples, but on when one person has experienced trauma, which certainly can and will impact the relationship.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mind is just so filled with client stories. That always happens when I'm sitting with people. And there was shortly after I completed my basic PBT training, I was working with a couple that I'd been working before I had started that training with, and I knew them before they got pregnant, through their pregnancy, and then after they had their first child. And to watch the transformation of the dynamic between them as they brought this little girl into the world, and to see something, I mean, I've never seen such a powerful autonomic, just kind of like re-templating of both like the husband and the wife, and to then be able to have the little girl come into session, and now we're all just like sitting on the floor together. It's just what I love so much about this conversation is just the awareness of, and the just yes and to invitation of intuition and spontaneity. We are humans. That's what makes therapy possible, is that we're together in this no matter what. And if we can make that invitation feel safe enough to accept, I think we can do just about anything.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Like we're together. We're not certainly not any like all knowing God that's special. I mean, we're like this human experience. I'm with you sitting on the floor with your kid, and I knew you guys before you got pregnant.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to point it, and to like talk to the husband of like, you're a big man and you're holding this little child, which that shows like so much of the problems that they'd had in their relationship was so just visually represented in the size differences between the two of them. And yet to watch him become so small and so sweet with this little baby girl, I mean, it was the most powerful resource we could have ever installed for both the husband and the wife, and just to watch them come together in sheltering this little baby.
So that what you just described, I had experience in my nervous system. Like I could feel literal warmth in my arms.
Yeah.
I actually have saliva in my mouth. I don't know why.
Yeah. I don't know why. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe if that's
salvatory response is just
activity.
going. Yeah.
Yeah, and just a real kind of just a mellow, like I don't want to like limit it to words. Just feels good.
Yeah.
That's the good stuff. That's therapy.
Yes,
That's healing.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Hey, can you guys come to Cocoa Beach for one of the beach sessions?
Oh, that'd be
That
fantastic.
sounds amazing.
You let me know. I will carve out my time in my schedule. I'll meet you there. One of my cues of danger that I'm trying to not have is sometimes I show up just a couple minutes late and then I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm running behind schedule. But I will make it a point to be on time.
Oh, yeah. We appreciate that.
We would be very forgiving if you were
Yes,
late.
absolutely. Absolutely. Maybe we could put together some additional videos and content for everybody.
Yes.
That.
Yeah. That would be amazing. It is an open invitation. Anytime you guys want, I'll show you the good, the bad, and the ugly of.
There you go.
Well, Jackie, thank you so much for your time on this, and we hope to be able to stay connected with you.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so many areas of collaboration and the way that you talk and we talk and the things that we do. So we'll have to stay in touch.
I did want to see if there was a way that you would like for the listeners to kind of get in touch with you, or to hear about the work that you're doing and potentially pursue any training opportunities you have.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to kind of shout out.
Yeah.
Okay. So my biggest thing I got going on, which I'm not always the best at, is this Facebook group. There's like, at the time of this recording, there's 12,500 people in there. And so it's all like child therapists and educators and stuff. So I try to post everything in there. But I do have an EMDR with Kids page. That's a group. And then I have 3 websites. I have Jackie Flynn Consulting. That's my EMDR with Kids jam, but I work with a lot of adults, really more adults than kids, but kids are one of my jams. And then playtherapycommunity.com. I have a membership site there where we have exclusive content to where we can kind of grow on a different level and network with each other around the world. And then I have a podcast, Play Therapy Community Podcast, that's been downloaded in like 52 countries. And I'm this podcast. And then I have my private practice website, Counseling in Brevard. I'm actually full right now. I don't have any like space available, but that's the best way to find me. I try to put my trainings on social media, try to keep up with my emails, but I'm currently searching for someone to help me with some admin support.
Yes. Yeah, we feel that totally. Well, we will find those links and put them in the show notes for all of you listening so that you can just kind of click and maybe find those Facebook pages, have easy access to that, those trainings. This is such great content. I hope a lot of you listeners decide to check it out and get in touch with Jackie for more information.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, one more thing I forgot to mention is like, I have an application in for a practical EMDR application of the Polyvagal Theory. So
Lovely.
At some point that's going to be alive. It's in the gestation period right now.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Love that.
Jackie, we'll get you a link to this episode too if you want to share what you've talked about with anybody as well, because this is such a good resource. So thank you again. Thank you again for joining us. Guys, thanks for listening, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.